One of the fun things about working with acrylic paints is that you can generate a lot of different looks and textures with just a few simple tips and tricks. And today on Mixed Media Masters, we're going to start looking at some different things we can do to blend our paints to come up with some very interesting effects. Hello makers, and welcome to the studio. If it's your first time here, then welcome. Good to have you here. If you like learning about abstract art creation and working with mixed media art supplies and all sorts of tips and tricks, then this is the right place. Feel free to hit that subscribe button below. We'd love to talk to you on a regular basis. We drop a video every single week. And on this week's video, as promised, we're going to talk about how we can create some interesting textures with our acrylic paints. Now, a lot of times when you're working with acrylics, you get something that's a very flat kind of look. So I have something I painted up previously here, and while it's interesting enough, it's also not very interesting from a textural standpoint. So one of the things I might think about doing is are there ways that I can enhance what I'm painting here to come up with some different methodologies. I want to talk about a couple different things we can do with our paintbrushes to come up with the different effects that we want, and some blending techniques, as well as a few things that are going to be kind of cool. Now I'm going to be working with some 6" by 6" pieces of cut heavy-duty watercolor paper. By the way, this is my go-to Strathmore watercolor paper. I'll put a link down below for you guys if you want to find it. And what I'm really thinking here, I have a standard palette with just some basic colors on it that I'm going to be working with. I'll throw some black in there in a few moments. I'm going to be using a fairly good size round-tipped brush here. Yeah, just make sure I get this rinsed off so I don't have any other paint from previous projects hanging out on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up blending some colors here. I'm going to use what is known as a crisscrossing pattern. And just as the name implies, it's not exactly what it is. I'm going to come in, I'm going to get some paint on here. And as I come in, I'm going to be distributing the paint using a crisscross. Now I can certainly come in and paint straight lines, but the reason I'm using a crisscross is I want to blend some other color in with it as well. And so as I come through using the crisscross pattern, and paint over the same section, let's get a little bit of this darker blue in here, for example, I can now start to create an interesting mixture of those three colors. And so as a result, if I keep at this, let me come up here and hit some of the white space here at the top using this. And we'll grab this teal and kind of go over the same areas. And then even the dark blue will get something in here. As you can see, we're going to start to get more of a mottled look, which is really the desired outcome. I want something that's going to have the texture that we're looking for here. Okay, let's focus kind of on the center area here. And again, I can just kind of work the paints I have by coming in and just doing that crisscross pattern over and over and over again, just making lots of little X's. And this paint is setting up pretty quickly, since it's not incredibly humid today. And so as a result, we're getting a fairly quick dry, which is not a terrible thing. And we'll get up here and, again, work with it. Now I can work with this for as long as I need to, but again, the takeaway here is to understand that what we're striving for here is a textured pattern. I want to have a basic blue color, let's say, but I don't want it to be a flat blue like we have over here. Instead, I want something that has some interesting textures. As you can see, we've blended three colors together, but we've left enough of each color so that it has a little bit of its own designations in here. Okay, and again, if I want to work additional color in, I can simply come in and using the crisscross pattern, I can add it like that. But I'm going to be creating a texture over things. So an important technique, and also relatively simple to do. So that is crisscrossing. Now our next technique, or texture, is going to be what we call scumbling. Now what is scumbling? Well, scumbling is when we take a paintbrush, like this one I have here, and instead of painting a line with it, which we might do, I'm going to use the paintbrush almost as something that tumbles across my canvas. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I've added some white here to my palette. I'm going to pick up some of this white. Let's get some of it off here. And what I want to do is, let's say I want to create a boundary between the red and the blue here on this image I've already painted. I can certainly come in and I can paint a line, but in this case what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to create a very irregular line. That's the objective here. So when I come in here like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of tumble it and create something that really creates a very weathered effect, if you will. I don't want it to be precise. That's really the overall objective. I want to create something that's much more organic and feels natural. Maybe I can outline the entire whiteness of the red here. The red outlined in white is what I'm trying to say in some sort of language. But again, as I tumble across here, I'm going to be changing the overall width of the line and its effect. And again, this might not be something that is necessary for all the painting that you're doing, but again, when you're creating anything that needs something that's a little bit more natural looking, and nature has a tendency to be rather unsymmetrical at times, as well as very jagged. So this is the kind of thing that could work. So this is an example of what we call scumbling. Now, the next technique I want to share with you is something that's kind of interesting and that allows us to reveal a little something of what's underneath something else. What am I talking about? Well, I'm going to grab some basic blue here. I have a yellow rectangle of sorts, and I'm going to create a blue rectangle on top of it, just like this. We'll make it kind of quick and dirty in here. Let's just get this kind of filled in with our blue color. And get some in here. Go. All right. And what's interesting about this, perhaps, again, depending on what we're trying to do, is the section where the two colors overlap could be made a little bit more interesting, let's say, if we could reveal a little bit more of the yellow that was underneath, maybe coming through as some sort of a scratch. And so we're going to use a technique called sgraffito, which is Italian for scratching. And I have different tools that we can use. I have a plastic, it's for modeling clay, but it would certainly work with what we're doing here. There it is. And I also have another tool here, which is really just kind of a rounded end point, but it allows me to do some scratching. And if I were to come in here and just kind of bear down a little bit, I can create some lines that will show the color underneath through. Let me use my my clay modeling tool to kind of do a whole bunch of scratches at the same time, and you get a sense of how we can do this. So again, if I'm trying to be somewhat clever, depending on what my look is, I can change the whole look and feel of the overlap between these two colors by allowing the bottom color to come through. And of course, it also works with our paper color. So if the bottom color is white, I can work this like this to get through the wet paint that I have and show the colors. Again, what we're trying to do here is get away from the idea of just straight, flat colors and create some sort of a texture, so sgraffito is one of those options. Now, our next option is how do we take and enhance things we've already painted, perhaps? Like, for example, I'm going to look at this yellow block on the piece we've already talked about, and let's say I want to put some red dots on that. Well, I can come in here, and with a small paintbrush, this is very small, doesn't hold a lot of paint, but it allows me to have more precision. I can come and I can leave a series of little dots in here, like this. And this is known as stippling. And this is the foundations of pointillism, where you might come in and do a lot of painting using just lots and lots of little dots to get the effect that you want. And again, what we're trying to do is dress up these basic flat areas of color with something that's going to be, well, perhaps hopefully a little bit more enhanced and interesting. Of course, we can pop up and change colors if we want to as well, and make these little dots that go in here. And just create, once again, the whole objective here is to create a very different look and feel from what might be here naturally. And there we go. So that is known as stippling, and that is our fourth effect. And for our fifth texturizing technique, we're going to use what is known as a liner brush. Now, if you can see here, a liner brush has a very, very long and very pointed tip to it. So look, see it right there? And I have an entire series of liner brushes, so you can buy them as a set if you need to have something like that. I'm going to get mine wet to get it ready to go here. And the beautiful thing about using a liner brush is that there may be things that you've created that are going to need to be outlined. And in this case, I'm going to be using a black color here. As you can see, I've added to my palette, I have some black. And I've also mixed it with water. It's about half water and half black paint, because I want something that's very pliable. And the thing about this liner brush that makes it work is it's perfect for making, as you might imagine, lines. So for example, if I want to create an outline, let's go across the red just so we can see it. I can go and I can draw my brush across, and I can create a line. And the line can also have a natural taper to it. For example, when we get to the end of the line, I can have it end in a point. And this is an alternative for people who are trying to create like boundaries. If I wanted to go back into something I've created and create a black line, then I can use a liner brush to get there. And the beautiful thing about the liner brush also, as you'll note, is that because it holds an awful lot of paint, you can go quite a ways with it to create the effects that you're looking for. So the thing that's nice about this, again, traditionally, I'll be honest, I might use something like a marker to go in and create the demarcation between colors if I was creating an abstract art piece, because my brush skills weren't really very good. But again, like with anything that we work on, a little bit of practice can make a huge difference here. And to be able to create, again, kind of the look and feel that we want, and being able to kind of bend that point as we want it, you can learn an awful lot about how to control the paintbrush, how to control your paint, and how to get the effects that you want. So a liner brush, again, is something that we can use if we want to come in and enhance something that we've already worked on by adding additional shapes and structure to. And that is what a liner brush does. Now again, this is just a simple list of 5 things that you can do from a brush standpoint to create things that are going to make your artwork stand out in a unique way. Because a lot of times, like I said, we end up with kind of flat colors on flat colors, which is, if that's your effect, awesome, you're already there. But if you want to enhance it and make your artwork even more interesting, these simple tools and techniques can really bring your art to the next level. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for dropping by. As always, we really appreciate it. This is Spider, and I'll see you next time.